Mr. Organ.
Hi, thank you for tuning in to Worldview Talk Show. My name is Chantale Escobar, and I am your host for today. Today we have with us Norberto Cruz, and we are talking about the dawning of Norberto Cruz. This is the part one today. We are talking about addictions. He was addicted to alcohol and drugs, and he comes from a past where he had an alcoholic father who was also a militant. So, Norberto, you want to talk to me about what your family life was like? I could only imagine.
Okay, what I'm going to start from when I remember this story was told to me by my mother. She had 3 children, and she lived in Spanish Harlem, 102nd and Lexington.
Okay.
Right? And she was alone. We were struggling real bad, and she met this gentleman. He's actually my stepfather.
Okay.
And he was good to her in the beginning, so on and so on. And then finally, we moved together, moved to Brooklyn.
Okay, as a nice mixed family unit now.
Yeah.
Right.
And I never forget 23rd Street in Brooklyn between 3rd and 4th Avenue, Park Slope. So things were good. I was a little kid. I didn't know what was going on. And then we moved on to another place, 20th Street and 4th Avenue, Park Slope again. We stood in Park Slope 46 years.
Wow.
That was me, myself, anyway. So as I got older, I started seeing things and noticing abuse. I didn't know it was abuse simply because I saw it so often that it became normal.
Right.
He was in a military. He did a total of 35 years.
Okay.
So he had grown up in a situation that he got put into, and he became a product of his environment.
Okay.
Because he was in the same situation, the abuse, the stepfather, the alcoholism,
so it was the same
the
exact
beatings, the exact thing. So what happens? It carried over to him, and he was a nasty man when he drank. And when he didn't drink, he was nasty also.
Okay.
Because he didn't have it in his system. So I couldn't figure him out.
Did you see those signs
yes,
in the beginning
I saw them. Yes, I saw them.
How old
but
were
I didn't know
how old were you?
I was in maybe 9, 10 years old.
Okay, so that's
I started
enough
seeing
to see.
it. Yeah, I started seeing it, and the abuse with my mother, and me trying to always figure out why I was getting hit and not doing nothing wrong.
Wow.
So I might get a little emotional, but it's okay. I'm used to it. He, and I just want to let the audience know that today, because of Christ, we love each other today.
That's beautiful.
That's
an amazing testimony.
And that's really, really awesome because I didn't love him before.
Right.
So,
right.
But anyway, so as time went by, I saw all those bad things happening in my home. I couldn't study. We used to have to, we used to take turns sleeping because we didn't know when he was going to wake up.
Wow. So someone always had to be on watch.
Yeah, so we were always on watch.
Wow.
So, and then as I got older, I always told myself I'm never going to be like him, but no, the apple falls straight down. It don't go that way.
Right.
So I picked up some traits, and lo and behold, at about 13 years old, because I'm 61 years old, I'm old school, I started what they call sniffing model glue.
Oh, wow. Okay.
That's a long time ago,
yes.
Right? So anyway, I ventured into that area. Eventually, I left it alone, but then the abuse at home was always there, the verbal abuse, mental abuse.
Right.
So I never forget one day, we used to look out the window when he was getting out the train because we could see, and we could see how he was walking according to how we had to armor ourselves and mentally prepare ourselves for that moment of him walking in the door.
Wow.
Whether he was going to curse us out or have me go get the belt.
Right. So he would have you go get the belt.
Go get the belt.
That's very interesting.
To hit me with my belt.
Right.
You know, a lot of things I couldn't figure out. So I built up a lot of rage in me, a lot of anger towards him, and also towards my mother, because I couldn't understand how she always told me she loved me. She was a wonderful woman, but why would she stay with this guy? So, but she was trapped. She became codependent. You know,
so she was afraid, essentially.
Yeah, to step away.
Right, and felt. I'm sure she felt that if she went out to protect you, that it would make things even worse.
Yes. So and it did. Like one time, for instance, I never forget. For some reason or another, he just wanted to hit me. So she stood in front of him and told him, "If you're gonna hit him, you gotta hit me instead." And he did.
Wow.
And he beat her down.
Wow.
And to this day, he says, he told my mother passed on a few years ago, that he don't remember those days. It could be blackouts or not.
Right. They could just be.
It could be just that it's in the subconscious mind and he's storing it.
Right.
So anyway, as time went by, seeing this all my life, sooner or later I started venturing a little more. I got into the smoking weed, and that became my God.
So how old were you around this time?
About 15, 16 years old.
Okay, so that was definitely, I'm sure, that was put in there. You didn't even have to search for that
at
that
I didn't
age.
have to.
Yeah.
I didn't have to. So what happens, and I grew up in a neighborhood that was drug infested.
Right. Well, you said Spanish Harlem, correct?
No, well, Spanish Harlem, that's where my mother told me that she met him. And then we moved to Park Slope.
That's right,
And in Park Slope in 20th Street, 4th Avenue, there was a methadone clinic there.
Wow.
So where there's methadone, there's heroin.
Okay.
And there's alcoholism, and there's
everything.
Prostitution, and there's this and there's that.
Wow.
So everything was around me. I remember going sometimes up to my roof. Our backyard was our roof. You know, we didn't have nowhere to go. We basically didn't go anywhere, didn't do anything, much recreation or anything. So going up to my roof and seeing heroin addicts with the needle in their arm, and I used to call the police.
Yeah.
Because I thought they were dead.
Oh,
instead they were on their nod.
Right.
You know.
Right.
So I saw a lot of ugly things. So what happens? I started venturing, smoking a lot of weed and a little drinking, but I was always I found an escape. My escape was sports.
Okay.
And exercise, and it's funny how I started lifting weights real young because I wanted to get stronger to beat them down.
Right.
Yeah, to beat them down.
No, that makes sense.
You know, so.
But not everyone would do that. So if you found two ways of escape.
Yeah. So in my mind, so it was a terror growing up. So, but what happens is that you become a product of your environment.
Right.
And it's tough to not get into it, because I had dreams. I had dreams to go to school, to do all like an example of how mean he was. I never forget how I graduated. I don't know, my mind. I didn't have peace of mind, enough sleep, and he provided all the other things. But the most essential thing was to feel loved as you're growing up. And a man teaching you how to be a man.
Right.
A woman teaches the children certain things, and a man certain things, right? So I was really mixed up. But anyway, then what happens, I got a girl pregnant.
Okay. How old were you?
I was 17 going on 18.
Okay.
I was almost going to be 18 years old. But that also comes from social status, where back in those days, it was taboo to speak to your children about don't have sex, don't do this, don't do that. It was like everything is hitting. So anyway, we fell into that trap. And, she had the baby. And I had an opportunity to just run, escape.
Yeah.
I was offered that
right.
and leave her behind, but I couldn't do it.
Yeah.
Why? It came to my mind that my real father, he did that.
Okay.
And I said I wasn't going to do that to myself.
Right.
So that was a blessing. But what happens is that I still, sooner or later, I fell into a greater addiction. We used to call it back in the days, the white lady, cocaine.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Once I discovered that really took me down a road and down a path it was hell itself.
Wow.
You know, I mean, I did so many ugly things, and I thank God for God's grace. You know, because God's grace is bigger than anything that we can do. So much bigger. Even to this day, I in my prayers, I talk to God. I say, God, how is it that you could forgive me for those ugly things that I did? You know, I started selling a little bit of drugs just so I could have my own.
Right.
But I started snorting a lot of cocaine.
Right. How did that impact your role and position as a father?
As a father, it destroyed my son. He became a product of
as well
his environment. Today he's clean. My son is 43 years old.
Okay.
You know, imagine I had a son at almost 18.
Right.
You know, so we have a great relationship. You know, and I made amends with him.
Yeah.
You know, I do through International Christian Center, Overcomers Outreach, 12-step, Christ-centered, and that's what keeps me grounded.
You know, it's a few people that we have, I've interviewed before as well, the overcomers. It's such a beautiful word. It's so powerful. It's so important. And to be able to really overcome any addiction, you need to have what we all really need to be centered in Christ.
Yes, that's right. He's our foundation.
Our true center, the one that is able to give us everlasting life and living water, you know, and so it's so beautiful to hear that you were able to not just find everlasting life within yourself, but find peace.
Yes.
You know, with your stepfather and with your son. Not everyone can say that.
And with my first wife.
And
I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. That's okay. Why don't you talk about your first wife?
Yeah, my first wife, we met when we were it's funny, I was about 11, 12 years old. Right across the street from us, there was a gas station, and the gas station owner called me and told me, if I wanted to work for him. It was in the summer, want to work. I was making like $15 a day. I thought I was making millions. I was giving my mother $750 a day.
Wow.
And keeping the $750, saving and buying my sneakers.
Right.
You know,
so
my
you don't
little things, you know. And so I got to meet her, and that's how we met.
So you knew her for a long time.
She came after me. but you know, I went with the flow. And, you know, we got together, and unfortunately, but fortunately, we did wind up getting married, a shotgun wedding. You know, I think there was somebody in the closet with a shotgun. You know, we didn't. You're that young. You don't know what love is. You know what lust is.
How old were you when you got married first?
Almost 18.
Almost 18. So is this the same one that you had a baby with, or?
Yes,
okay.
Same one. Yeah.
Fantastic.
So you know, life was hard.
Yes.
We both didn't have educations. I did finish I get my diploma.
Yes.
She went to school pregnant to get her diploma.
Yes.
And I used to feel so bad for her because, you know, the embarrassment. But she got it done, and she passed on, as a matter of fact, 8 years ago from cancer, breast cancer.
Wow.
But the Lord gave me another great woman.
That's beautiful.
A woman of God. We'll get to that one time or another. So we got married, and we had the kid, and finally, 2 years later, we moved together. We couldn't even buy Pampers for the kid when we first had it. We couldn't even afford that. So we got a little beat-up apartment. We moved in, so on and so on. But then as I got on my own, things got a little crazier. I started experimenting a little more. But the craziest thing is that I didn't get into heavy drugs till I was almost 30 years old.
Wow.
Because I used to I thought that marijuana was okay. And that's all I do. I really didn't like drinking because I didn't like the after effects. You know, I didn't like
a lot of us do.
Yeah, I didn't like the after effects. So I got into the heavier drugs then, closer to 30. And then we got together, and we were struggling bad. But I still hadn't ventured into selling drugs. But see, the thing about my neighborhood, also a lot of the other children growing up, the teenagers, the people in their 20s, their life was all busted up too, because it was the same situation. Same thing, you know.
So it's like
social life, everyone was really hurting. I have some friends that served 20-something years in prison, 14-something years in prison, 10 years, 8 years, 5 years.
So it was a matter of getting caught or not, basically.
Yes. So, but what I did, I stood away from when they did their nasty stuff. I don't have to be specific. We could figure that out.
Yes.
You know, armed robberies, you know, and you go from there.
Yes.
I stood away from that. So, but they got caught, and eventually, you know, a lot of them passed away, so on and so on. And so I asked myself, how is it I'm still going? You know, so we know it's all God.
Right.
You know, it's all God.
So how did that impact, you know, your life at such a young age to have a baby and get married and be in a position where whether, you know, you're addicted to drugs or not, whether you're young or not, you know, becoming parents and newly married is always a challenge. Did you find yourself trying to find a way of escape even more from those challenges, or did you, you know, handle it differently?
I definitely wanted to find an escape, but not so much. I never really thought about escaping with drugs.
Okay.
My escape was that I stood so busy with work and sports, because I played sports till I was 46 years old.
Oh, wow.
You know, and I happened to be really good. Let's put it this way. My parents went to see me my first game ever in sports when I was 23 years old.
Wow.
So, in other words, they never took me to a game. They never, you know.
How did that make you feel?
Oh, I felt terrible.
Yeah.
But I felt so good.
When they did.
When they did.
Yeah.
You know, and like I said, I have no animosity towards my stepfather. I understand what he went through.
So let me ask you about your stepfather, because your mother is still with him.
Oh, well, she passed on 3
years.
It's going to be almost 4. He's still alive. He's 84 years old.
Oh, wow.
And he's struggling with his health, so on and so on.
Did she stay with him all the time?
Yes, she stood through thick and thin.
Wow.
50-something years.
50-something years, yeah. That's amazing.
Yeah.
And so
she just took it and took it. But the thing about that, that you know what? We had sisters. Our sisters married men like my father.
Wow.
See how
the cycle
the cycle
continued.
Keeps on going, but then they woke up a little sooner than 50 years.
Okay, good. I'm happy to hear that for sure.
Yes. But so good.
No, that's you know, it's really interesting to hear. You know, we would hope and we would think that people would definitely not fall into the same trap, but it's inevitable. It's not always inevitable. You know, a lot of times we need a seed planted in us, or need an example shown to us that there is a way out other than just getting out of the house.
Yes.
Because if you have no foundation of what to do and how to have a better life, or even know that you're worth more, that you can have more, that you are valuable, you're just going to fall into what you know.
Yes.
So I think it's beautiful that, you know, you were able to come out of that, and your sisters as well, and to be able to say, hey, for the next generation, we're worth more than that because Christ told us this.
That's right.
You know,
that's right.
There is value to who we are, and there's a reason why we need to stay out of things and go into, you know, that narrow path that not everyone understands.
Yeah, new chapter.
Because, you know, you're talking about your family life and the neighborhoods that you lived in, and they were all, you know, you can say infested with the same situations. How can you not
fall into that trap? It's rare, you know, that people wouldn't. Can I continue? Also my brothers got caught up in addiction. I have a brother, and I'm proud to say he was not proud to say that he was a crackhead and a cokehead and so on and so on and so on, but today he's a pastor.
That's amazing.
You know, so we know that that's all God. Because there's no way that I could have pulled myself out of the pit of hell, or my brother out of the pit of hell. And I was telling brother Reggie on how I would, every time I see my brother, I think of when I used to be doing my thing, getting coked up, and he was smoking his crack. He would be walking down the street, looking in the street, as crackheads do.
Right.
See what they find, and I would be hiding in my car so he don't see me.
Wow. And why would you hide from your brother?
Why? Because I was embarrassed for him to see me high like that.
Wow.
And I didn't want to see him
So even though you were both doing
in the same
situation,
thing. So he used to hide from me, I used to hide from him. That's what addiction does.
That's really something.
Yes, that's what addiction
really
does.
Something.
You know.
Let me ask you. So when did you find Christ? How did that happen?
Well, that happened because of the pain and suffering. God allowed so much pain and suffering in my life that broke me. You know, because growing up, I knew there was a God, but I didn't know God. You know, so like the story of the God is the clay potter, we are the clay.
Yes, yes.
Right? I was that huge lump of clay with a lot of lumps on it.
Yes.
With no shape and form to
we
it.
We all are.
Stinking, smelly, you know, because you know that our righteousness are like filthy rags.
Right.
Right? And so I went through a lot of stuff. I went through a lot of pain and suffering. And then you know what the whole shame to it, though, was? My wife was never into drugs because I was never home.
Wow.
She said, you know, I don't know what attracts you so much to the streets. Wow. I'm going to find out. She got caught up.
Oh, my. So she wanted to see
what is it that kept me away from home. You
wow.
know? And I wasn't out there seeking women, only the white lady.
Right.
You know,
right.
Which is
the
worse.
Illusion.
The illusion. Looking for the next one, thinking that I'm going to catch that same buzz that I caught the first time I tried it.
Wow.
But anyway, so life got real ugly for me. I had a really great job. I used to run a union hall and medical building for local 875 in Queens. And every payday after payday, I would never make it to work. With excuse after excuse after excuse. I did it for years, and they never fired me.
Wow.
Why? I would have fired me. But there came a point in time that I went up to the president of the union, and I told him, look, I need help. He says, I kind of figured that.
Wow.
So go do what you got to do. Your job is waiting for you.
Wow.
So I went away. I don't know if you've heard of Way Out Ministries.
No.
They're Spanish ministry. They're located in Manhattan.
Okay.
So I went out to this rehab, but being full of myself, I didn't stay.
Okay.
So I came back. I stood clean for a few months, and I made up for what I didn't do in those few months.
Okay.
So and then I met people that were hurting just like me,
right.
And I was the last one to know that I was hurting.
Wow.
You know, that's how it is, because that's the addiction lies to you.
Yeah.
The addiction lies to you. Addiction is so powerful. So and then there came a point in time through the pain and suffering that I came to realize that I was powerless over my addiction.
Wow.
And that only a power greater than myself, Jesus Christ, could set me free.
That's beautiful.
And I had to admit to myself that I was powerless. I had to ask God to remove it. And I don't regret none of the pain anymore.
Wow.
Because that's what set me free. You know, to be able to go into the federal prison on Sunday mornings and to be able to walk back out, that's big, right?
That's a good thing.
That's big.
Not everyone
federal
can say
prison,
that.
that's tough.
Yes.
You know, so anyway, it came to the point where I caught a heart attack. I wind up catching hepatitis C. I wind up catching prostate cancer.
Wow.
And God has healed me from all of that.
Praise God. My goodness.
I don't even know why.
Because he loves you.
Because he loves us.
Because he loves us.
You know.
He's
and guess what? I still, we reap what we've sowed. Right. I still go through some difficulties with my health. I still fall short of the glory of God, but Jesus didn't fall short. You know,
never.
And we know that if we were the only people on this earth, he would still die.
Absolutely.
You know, it doesn't matter.
He'll chase after that one.
So exactly, you know, that he left the 99 and went after the one.
Exactly.
So then what happens? That close to 40 years old, I just couldn't do it no more. And you know what did it? That I never forget, my granddaughter was born.
Oh.
So me and my wife went out and celebrated. Okay. I couldn't even go see her in the hospital because I got so blasted.
Wow.
And then when I finally went to see her, as I sat there and little. Oh, by the way, my mother had been praying for me for 20 years.
Of course she was.
That's what it is. That's what a mother will do.
Yes.
A father will pray for you for 2 years. A mother will pray for you for 20 years. So anyway, I went to the hospital and I looked at her and I got tears in my eyes, and I said, and what came to my mind? You know how when show and tell, and the kids in the school, they ask them, "What does your grandfather do?"
Oh, right.
My grandfather's a junkie.
My goodness.
And I get the chills as I say that.
Yes.
I say, what am I gonna
do? What do you have to show?
Life has to change.
Yeah.
So then I started surrendering a little more, and then I read this book called, what's the title? Come As You Are. I just refuse to leave you that way.
Wow.
It's Jesus.
Yes.
I had that book. I lent it to somebody. They haven't given it back.
And that's okay, because they needed it.
Maybe
I'm sure they gave it to even someone else.
So at 40 years old, I started going to church with my wife. She had converted. She had stopped using drugs 5 years before me. I still thought I had some runs in me, And we started going to church, so on and so on. And she passed on, but she passed on with, absent from the body, present with the Lord, because she had accepted Jesus.
That's beautiful.
So I have peace of mind with that.
Peace of mind,
but guess what? Because of the choices that I made, if I don't guard myself, I could start beating myself up.
Right.
Did she get cancer because I introduced her to drugs?
Okay.
All those things.
Yeah.
And the enemy uses all of that stuff to keep you down and to keep you down. But the Bible says that he who the Son sets free is free.
Free indeed. Yes.
So I'm free from that. I don't have to carry that weight.
And it's beautiful.
Take up your yoke.
Yes.
Right? He says, take up my yoke.
Because
it's easy and light.
Easy and light. My burden is easy and light.
Yes.
One thing that you said that's really pivotal to anyone going through any addictions, and it doesn't always have to be drugs or alcohol.
No, there's lust.
There's anything that you put first.
Yes,
anything
before
that
God.
You chase before God. Anything that you think, quite frankly, is what you need to breathe or to live.
Yeah, I can't live without this.
That alone right there, it takes up your
job.
whole, your job, your car. There's so many things that you create as an idol that you're addicted to. You have to realize that you are powerless. You have to recognize, I have a problem, and be okay with that. And then say, okay, but now what do I do?
Yes.
Now,
there's the maintenance
how can
part.
There's the constant maintenance, someone who has a car, someone who has a house, someone who has a business, there has to be that constant maintenance.
Yeah, you got to tune up your car, right? Or what's going to happen?
Absolutely. You have to do the ins and the outs.
You're not going to get over the bridge.
Right? So that's important. So, it's beautiful for you to be able to acknowledge that. And no matter how old you are.
To this day, I'm powerless.
Yes.
It doesn't matter how clean
And
I've been.
The beautiful thing is as we know, as we are weak in our weaknesses,
He is strong.
His strength is perfected
my grace is,
in us.
Yes, my power is made perfect in your weakness.
Yes.
My grace is sufficient.
Yes.
But
we must
have
lean
overcome.
and rely on Him, and that's what you've done, and I definitely praise God for that. And it's such a blessing to be able to hear your testimony, and I know there's even more.
Oh my God.
to go on with that. But
I want to write a book.
I was gonna say you better.
I have enough enough input to.
But
to
even
that.
the book that you read, "Come As You Are." So many times people think like, oh, I'm gonna
I have to stop that.
The church is gonna go on fire if I walk in. No, quite the contrary. You're needed. None of us are made perfect. None of us. And so to hear that is the one essential thing that you read to tie everything in that just spoke through was beautiful. Well, I thank you all for joining in. And there's going to be a part 2, and I'm excited
thank you
for
also.
Thank you so much for being faithful and answering the call today to be able to share your testimony. And we pray that it helps someone get out of any addiction, no matter what it looks like. And we thank you for joining in. And just come back for more Worldview Talk Show. My name is Chantale Escobar, and this is Norberto Cruz.
Hello.
And God bless. Thank you.